My toxic girlfriend told me I wasn't a real man for not being able to keep up with a lavish lifestyle, despite being the only one working to support us. So I got with her best friend and left her to realize what she's really missing. I've always believed that love is supposed to be a shared effort, that no matter the hurdles, you tackle them as a team. Maybe that's a bit naive. Or maybe I'm just a kind of person who clings to the ideals of partnership, believing two people can shoulder life's burdens as one. But it took me 2 years of being with the wrong woman to realize just how one-sided a relationship can become when you're the only one genuinely trying. Sometimes, love is not enough, especially when the other person wants more than you can provide, and more than you should ever be asked to give. My name is Mark Johnson, and I'm 25 years old. I met Olivia at the tail end of our college days. She was dazzling at first glance, a vivacious smile, wavy hair that bounced when she laughed, and a confidence that drew people in. We stumbled into each other in the campus library, of all places. It was early April, a few weeks before graduation. I was trying to finish a group project, working my way through a stack of economics textbooks. Olivia came barreling around the corner, juggling a coffee cup and a binder full of notes, not looking where she was going. She practically crashed into my table, sending her binder to the floor along with half of my research papers. She apologized 1,000 times, frantically gathering her notes and my scattered documents. Our eyes met, and she broke into that bright smile. For a moment, we both laughed at the absurd chaos. She seemed genuine, warm, and grateful for the help I offered as we rearranged our papers. Before I even knew what was happening, we struck up a conversation about final exams, job prospects, and how neither of us was ready to say goodbye to college life. She asked if I wanted to grab a coffee sometime, to make up for the near-fatal collision, she joked. I was charmed. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment I fell for her. But from that day forward, I felt like we were inseparable. We began dating officially a week before graduation. Neither of us really expected to fall so fast and so hard, but it happened. She invited me to meet her parents during the summer. I introduced her to mine. We spent the last few months of that lazy, post-college period acting like the world was our oyster. We planned road trips, talked about future goals, and indulged in every excitement we had been too busy to enjoy while still in school. In those early days, Olivia was easy to love, quick to laugh, always suggesting spontaneous adventures, brimming with life. But even then, I glimpsed a side of her that made me uneasy. She had expensive tastes, a liking for luxury that I, having grown up in a modest household, couldn't quite relate to. She insisted, for instance, on celebrating our first month together at a high-end restaurant downtown, one with prices that made my eyes pop. Still, I paid for it, wanting to show her I cared. She gave me a big kiss at the end of the night, raving about the gourmet meal. I felt proud, pleased that I could treat her, but also quietly aware that my bank account had taken a hit. It was a harbinger of what was to come. That summer, after we both graduated, I landed a job as a junior financial analyst at a decent firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, with a reasonable salary and room for growth. Olivia, on the other hand, wasn't in a hurry to find work. She claimed she wanted time to figure out her true passion. At first, I admired her for that. Not everyone knows what they want to do right away. She deserved the chance to discover her path. My apartment was small, just a one-bedroom with a tiny living area, but it was comfortable. I'd move in shortly before graduation, anxious to start adulthood on my own terms. After a few weeks of driving back and forth to see each other, Olivia suggested it would be easier if she just moved in. She said it like it was the most natural progression in the world. And it felt that way to me too. We were in love, and sharing a living space seemed romantic, exciting. Besides, I hated those lonely nights after she drove away. So she moved in. I shifted my furniture around, carved out some closet space for her, and we turned the cramped living room into our cozy nest. For a while, it was lovely. I'd wake up, get ready for work, and there she'd be, still dozing, hair spread across a pillow. I'd leave a note telling her to have a good day. Some nights, she'd cook dinner. She was quite a good cook, actually. So when I walked in from the train station, the aroma of stir-fry or roasted chicken would greet me, and she'd come out to hug me hello. "You're working so hard," she'd say, smiling sweetly as she passed me a plate. "I want to take care of you." Those were beautiful moments. They made me feel we were building something real, a life that balanced her softness and my steady determination. I was proud to provide for us, to cover rent and groceries, seeing how she was still figuring out her next step. But as time went on, Olivia's next step never materialized. She lingered at home, scrolling through social media, occasionally talking about a business idea or dream to travel the world as an influencer. I tried to be supportive, reminding her I'd back her if she found a solid plan. She said she'd get around to it. Days blurred into weeks, and weeks stretched into months. By the start of our second year together, that initial glow had dimmed. I was working long hours, sometimes more than 60 a week, and my stress levels were high. My bosses liked me and gave me more responsibilities, which meant more money but also heavier pressure. Meanwhile, Olivia was still unemployed, still coasting. We'd have occasional arguments about money. She wanted to book a trip to Spain, or buy a designer bag, or dine at expensive restaurants. Each time, I tried to gently remind her that I was doing my best, but I couldn't afford those luxuries on my current salary. "Well, can't you just pick up some side gigs?" she'd ask, her tone turning sour. "I see other guys hustling on weekends." It stung. I worked my butt off, day in and day out. I was proud that I'd gotten promoted within the first year of my job, but it was still an entry-level position in the grand scheme of things, not a gateway to unlimited funds. Yet no matter how calmly I explained the constraints of my budget, Olivia rolled her eyes or brushed me off, as though I was simply too incompetent to make more money. One night, after an especially tense argument, she stormed out, claiming she needed a breath of fresh air. She drove off in my car, my car, which she used as though it were a communal vehicle whenever she felt like it. I sat on the couch, fuming, wondering where the woman I'd fallen in love with had gone. The sweet, caring Olivia who once cooked me dinner now seemed to regard me primarily as a wallet. She came home hours later, smelling of wine and carrying a brand-new handbag. I didn't ask how much she spent. I didn't want to fight anymore. A part of me felt pathetic for not standing up to her, but I was too tired for the emotional tug-of-war. That's when a seed of resentment took root in my heart. I could feel it, this dull ache of bitterness whenever she breezed in with new clothes, insisting that I pay off the credit card bill. My love for her was still there, overshadowed by frustration, but I tried to convince myself we could fix things. Things took a sharp turn when Olivia insisted I integrate into her social circle, a group of women she'd known for years who all lived relatively close by. She'd spend hours on the phone, gossiping or making brunch plans, sometimes forgetting I was in the room. She'd say, "Oh, Mark, you should meet the girls. We hang out all the time. You'll love them." I was open to it. Frankly, I wanted to understand more of her world. And for a while, it worked, sort of. They weren't a bad group of people, though a few had that same thirst for extravagance Olivia did. They'd post selfies from lavish parties, dress in designer clothes, and talk about the next big trip to a tropical destination. I felt a bit out of place, a modest earner among high-maintenance tastes, but I smiled through it, trying to be supportive. The one person in that group who really clicked with me was Kate. She was different, quiet but observant, with warm brown eyes and a soft laugh. She didn't flaunt wealth. Instead, she had an easygoing sense of style and a down-to-earth attitude. When everyone else was discussing brand names or complaining about first-class flight bookings, Kate and I would exchange knowing smiles, a wordless conversation that said, "We don't really fit in here, do we?" Over time, I discovered Kate had a steady job in event coordination. She worked behind the scenes at weddings and corporate functions, making sure everything ran smoothly. She was good at it, and she loved it. Whenever we ended up in the same corner during group hangouts, she'd regale me with funny or inspiring stories about the event she helped organize. I admired her drive. She was confident but not arrogant, ambitious but not flashy. One weekend, Olivia decided to drag me on a triple date with her friend Charlotte and her friend's new boyfriend, as well as Kate, who came alone because she wasn't dating anyone. We were supposed to go out for dinner, and then hit a club. By the time we got to the restaurant, Olivia was already in a foul mood because she'd spent the afternoon with her mother, who apparently lectured her about money. She took her frustration out on me, criticizing my shirt, my cologne, my posture at the table. Anything she could nitpick. Everyone seemed uncomfortable. Kate tried to cheer me up with a gentle joke about how dinner conversation should be easier than wedding planning, but that only drew Olivia's glare. I realized that night how far we'd drifted from the easy, loving atmosphere of our early days. I returned home feeling drained, ashamed, and furious. I remember lying in bed, eyes on the ceiling, hearing Olivia's faint snores while my mind churned with confusion. Why was I letting her walk all over me? Was this what love was supposed to feel like? Shortly after that disastrous evening, Olivia's demands skyrocketed. She wanted a vacation, an expensive one, naturally, to escape the stress of life. I stared at her in disbelief when she waved a brochure for a luxury Caribbean resort. The nightly rates alone were more than my weekly paycheck. "That's out of the question," I said, shaking my head. "We can't afford that. Maybe something more modest." Her response was to scoff. "You can't afford it," she said, emphasizing the you. I thought you'd want to do something nice for your girlfriend. Maybe you need a better job if you're so worried about money. I tried to keep calm, but my voice shook with anger. Or maybe you need a part-time job to help cover some of these things you want to do. She went cold, narrowing her eyes as though I'd insulted her parents. Are you serious? I'm your girlfriend. Mark, a man should provide for his woman. I thought you understood that. Those words rattled around my head like a bullet. She stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, speechless, letting the wave of frustration wash over me. It was clear she thought being provided for was her entitlement, no matter how unrealistic or unfair. All my kindness, my time, my paycheck, my patience, apparently none of it was enough. 2 days later, we had another blowout over groceries. The credit card was nearly maxed, and I told her we should probably cut back on takeout and fancy dinner parties. She shouted that she was sick of living poor and needed to get away for a bit. That evening, she packed a bag and drove to her parents' house. She declared she'd stay there for a few nights to get some space. Her parting words were, I need a real man, Mark. Figure out how to be one, or I'm done. Watching her leave filled me with a mixture of hurt and relief. Part of me was glad for the quiet that followed. I spent those days alone in the apartment, focusing on work, ignoring her texts except for the bare minimum required to keep track of her plans. Late at night, I'd stare at the empty bed, remembering how once upon a time, having her there was the best thing in the world. Now, it felt like an unwelcome intrusion. Around this time, I grew closer to Kate. It wasn't intentional. She just happened to text me one evening, asking if Olivia was okay. She'd noticed Olivia had been venting on social media about how guys can't be trusted and men are disappointments. Kate suspected something was up. I hesitated, unsure if I should share relationship troubles with someone so close to my girlfriend. But the frustration inside me needed an outlet. I told Kate, in vague terms at first, that Olivia and I were going through a rough patch. Surprisingly, Kate didn't just blow it off or take Olivia's side. She asked thoughtful questions, suggested that maybe Olivia was going through something deeper. She also pointed out, gently, that Olivia had always liked living large. Maybe it was time for a serious talk about finances and expectations. We chatted for hours, text messages evolving into a phone call that lasted past midnight. I found myself confessing just how worn down I felt, how I tried to meet Olivia's demand but couldn't keep up. Kate listened, offered sympathy, and even apologized for anything she might have done in the past that contributed to my discomfort. She seemed genuinely concerned, and for the first time in a long time, I felt heard. Over the next few days, Kate became a confidant. She'd send me a quick message in the morning, something like, hang in there, you're doing great, or invite me for coffee after work. At first, I felt guilty. What would Olivia think if she knew I was confiding in her friend? But Olivia had stormed off, leaving me alone, and Kate offered a sort of gentle support I desperately needed. Meanwhile, Olivia remained distant. She called a few times, mostly to complain about the bedroom color in her parents' place or to share how bored she was out there. She never once asked how I was doing. Instead, she repeated her stance that I needed to get my act together and be the provider she deserved. She claimed she'd come back when she felt ready. Each call left me drained. I was starting to think the relationship was beyond saving. I was tired of begging her to see reason. But ironically, I still miss the rare moments when she was kind and loving, those fleeting echoes of the woman I once thought was the one. After about a week at her parents', Olivia decided to move back. I didn't greet her with open arms. I kept a polite distance as she piled her bags in the hallway. We had a strained conversation about how things needed to change, but we didn't solve anything. She refused to consider part-time work, and I refused to sink deeper into debt. Our standoff was quiet but intense, like a slow-burning fire. Day by day, our interactions devolved into cold politeness or outright snipes. She grunted disinterested hey when I got home from work. If dinner happened to be ready, it was because she wanted me to pay for the ingredients she'd bought on my credit card. She stopped hugging me, kissing me, or asking about my day. I felt like a tenant, not a partner. Worst of all, I started suspecting she was looking elsewhere for attention. She'd go out late with her friends, post pictures on social media, and ignore my texts. I didn't have proof, but I sensed something shifting in her. She no longer cared to even pretend we were doing fine. During this time, my connection with Kate grew deeper. She'd check in regularly, offering kind words that were the only genuine warmth I received. Sometimes we'd watch a Netflix show together, virtually, each in our own place, texting commentary back and forth. It felt innocent, yet also intimate. I was cautious, not wanting to cross any boundaries, but it felt so good to have someone treat me like a human being rather than a piggy bank. In my gut, I knew a line was being drawn, and maybe I was inching close to it. But part of me no longer cared if Olivia disapproved. She'd abandoned me emotionally long ago. It was a Sunday afternoon, one of those rare weekends I had off. Olivia spent the whole day at some brunch with her friends. I tried to use the time productively, catching up on laundry, tidying the apartment, updating my budget spreadsheet to see how deep in the red we were. It wasn't good. The bills kept piling up. My credit card was dangerously close to maxed out. The best solution would be for me to have a serious conversation with her about cutting expenses or for her to pitch in financially. But every time I tried, I either got dismissed or shouted at. Late in the day, Olivia came home, tipsy from mimosas, her cheeks flushed. She planted a half-hearted kiss on my temple, then headed for the shower. As she tossed her phone onto the couch, the screen lit up, displaying a notification. Normally, I'd never rummage through her phone. Privacy is important. But something about the icon caught my eye. It was Tinder, a bright pink flame, glaring up at me. A slow, cold burn ignited in my stomach. I picked up the phone, looked at the screen. Sure enough, Tinder was installed and apparently active. My hands began to shake. I didn't open the app or scroll through her matches. I didn't need to. The fact that it was on her phone at all spoke volumes. She'd already declared me inadequate in every possible way. Now she was evidently exploring other options behind my back. In that moment, something inside me snapped. A mental barrier I'd held for months, maybe years, just crumbled. I realized I was done being used, done with the emotional abuse, done with the constant feeling of never being good enough. This was a final betrayal, or at least a final blow that convinced me there was no saving us. She was still in the shower when I walked into the bedroom and yanked a duffel bag from under the bed. I methodically packed clothes, essentials, my laptop. I wasn't planning on staying here another night. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she looked startled to see me hastily stuffing items into the bag. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice dripping with irritation. I didn't bother to hide my anger. "I saw Tinder on your phone." She blinked, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. It's just an old app. I forgot to delete it." "You're lying," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Even if you're not, this is it. I can't live like this. I'm done." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Fine. If you can't handle a real woman, leave. Not like you were providing for me properly anyway." I stared at her, my lips pressed tight. The rage swelled in my chest, but I swallowed it down. I refused to lower myself to petty insults. Instead, I shouldered the bag, grabbed my keys, and walked out without another word. In the hallway, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Kate's number. My mind reeled. Should I call someone else? Should I just get a motel and figure things out? But Kate was the one I trusted. She picked up on the second ring. My voice wavered. "Kate, I'm sorry to call you like this, but do you think I could stay with you for a couple of days? Olivia and it's over." She didn't hesitate. "Of course, Mark. Come over. I'll get the spare room ready." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Thank you," I whispered. The drive to Kate's place felt surreal. My entire body buzzed with adrenaline and heartbreak, yet also a strange sense of relief. For too long, I had been shackled to an illusion, trying to fix a relationship that was doomed by selfishness. Now, I was free. Maybe not happy, but free. Kate lived in a modest condominium, just a 10-minute drive from my apartment. I'd been there before, for casual group hangouts, and once, to help her move a heavy piece of furniture. She greeted me at the door with an expression of gentle concern, immediately ushering me inside. I sank onto her couch, dropping the duffel at my feet. She disappeared briefly and came back with a glass of water, pressing it into my hands. I hadn't realized how parched I was. I took a few sips, struggling to steady my breathing. "What happened?" she asked softly, sitting next to me but giving me space. I managed to explain, stumbling over the words, trying not to get too emotional. I told her about Olivia's demands, the Tinder app, the final straw that shattered everything. Kate listened intently, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I expected her to say, "I told you so," or to curse Olivia's name. But she didn't. She just stayed quiet, letting me spill my pent-up feelings. When I finished, I felt exhausted, as though I'd just run a marathon. Kate gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "I'm so sorry," she said. "You deserve so much better than that." I believed her. In that moment, I felt more validated than I had in a very long time. Those next few days at Kate's place were pivotal. She let me crash in her spare room, which was actually more of a home office with a fold-out couch. It wasn't luxurious, but it felt safe. In the mornings, I went to work as usual. In the evenings, I'd come home to Kate's and find a calming environment. No fights, no insults, no demands. She'd cook or would order something affordable. We'd talk about our days, watch a movie, and share a few laughs. It felt normal. It felt right. At first, I was wary of how close we were becoming. Olivia was Kate's friend. After all, wasn't this a betrayal? But Kate assured me that she had tried to help Olivia see reason, only to be brushed off. She admitted Olivia had always been a bit self-centered, but it had gotten drastically worse in the last year. Kate wasn't keen on the idea of choosing sides, but after seeing how Olivia treated me, she felt it was important to offer me compassion. As the nights passed, we found ourselves inching closer, literally and figuratively. It started with a comforting hug, then drifting to my side of the couch during a movie. Then one evening, while we were tidying the kitchen, Kate's hand brushed against mine. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. Our gazes locked. In those few seconds, I felt something shift between us, a mutual understanding that there was a spark. I hesitated, a tangle of guilt and longing in my chest. She looked at me with soft eyes, as though giving me permission to take the next step. And I did. We kissed, hesitantly at first, then with growing certainty. The realization crashed over me that I could have a relationship built on mutual respect, kindness, and genuine affection, rather than walking on eggshells with someone who only saw me as a means to an end. For the first time in ages, I felt wanted not for my wallet, but for who I was. Over the following weeks, Kate and I took things slowly. She knew I was still nursing the wounds of my breakup. We agreed not to rush into any big declarations or changes, but it was already clear that we cared for each other. We went out for coffee on weekends, took walks in the local park, and sometimes just stayed in, talking until midnight. With Kate, I could relax, be my unguarded self, and she embraced that wholeheartedly. Meanwhile, Olivia continued to text or call sporadically, mostly with venomous accusations. She'd say things like, "You'll regret this," or "You never deserve me." Once, she demanded I come back and pay for the rent in full, as if I were obligated to continue funding her life. I ignored her messages. Her voice, once so dear to me, now felt toxic. From mutual friends, I eventually heard that Olivia tried to keep up a lavish lifestyle, moving to a more expensive apartment after I left. But without my income or support, she quickly found herself struggling. Rumor had it she'd picked up 2 part-time jobs, working at a boutique during the day and a bar at night, still searching for a man to bankroll her existence. She complained incessantly on social media, blaming the poor men out there for not treating her like a queen. The irony was painful and maybe a bit satisfying. I'd be lying if I said I felt zero satisfaction at Olivia's downfall. A part of me definitely experienced a grim sense of justice. After everything I'd sacrificed, she was learning the hard way that real life isn't a fairy tale of infinite spending. But mostly, I was too focused on rebuilding my own happiness to dwell on her situation. My career flourished once I wasn't battling daily stress at home. I found new energy to excel, earn another promotion, and discovered I actually loved my work when it wasn't overshadowed by drama. Kate celebrated my achievements, leaving me encouraging notes or cooking a nice dinner after I brought home good news. Little gestures that reminded me love is about showing up for each other in 100 small ways, not just expecting grand gestures with someone else's money. It wasn't an overnight transformation. My trust had been shattered, my self-esteem battered by 2 years of constant criticism. But with Kate's steady presence, I began to heal. I realized how vital it is to love someone who respects you as an equal. We divided expenses fairly, each contributing in proportion to our incomes. We agreed to talk openly about finances, future plans, and any concerns that might arise, ensuring nothing festered beneath the surface. It was a brand new experience for me in the best possible way. Occasionally, we'd run into people who knew Olivia. They'd mention her in passing, how she was complaining about her new apartment or trying to date some rich guy. Kate and I usually just exchanged knowing looks, not gloating, but also not surprised. Olivia's priorities had never changed. She was chasing the lifestyle she believed she deserved, even if it meant living beyond her means. After about 6 months, Olivia texted me one last time. A brief, clipped message. "So you and Kate, huh? You'll regret betraying me." I stared at those words, felt a spike of anxiety, but then let it go. I'd spent too long letting it define my emotions. I blocked her number. She was my past. My future was with a woman who saw me as a partner, not a paycheck. What did you think of this story? Let me know your thoughts about it in the comments. And thanks for listening.